Thank you for the invitation, and we heard a lot about customer experience. We heard a lot about the shift from how we are interacting with how the users are interacting with the buying patterns, how the transformation is working. So what is all underlying all this is what do we do underlying all this? I think applications are the core underlying for every business today. Like we heard from Aditya, emails, voice interactions have declined. When we talk about applications, we talk about chatbots, we talk about other ways of interacting. We talk about applications talking to each other, building that capability of intelligence. Now, how do they do that? I mean, obviously, we all know it's APIs. Now, when APIs, we talk about APIs, they is there a possibility of breaching there? How do we secure them? Because that is actually the point where the data is being flowing. So we talk about data being flowed and flowing in different directions, different applications. So how do we look at from a security aspect of API? So Vineet, let's start with you. We know that cyber threat landscape is changing every day. Zero-day attacks come in, ransomwares and everything. How do you think the security strategies are comprehensive and are adapting to these new threats? And are there any frameworks or best practices which organizations should follow, or do they exist today?
No, absolutely. Thank you for having me on the panel. I hope I'm audible. So, I think before I answer the question, there's some very basic things in my experience that where API security fails or what really causes some of these failures. Now, if you look at organizations, the API economy, so-called API economy, is growing, and everybody just has a passion of building API these days. Especially the development teams are like just build an API for everything. And what it leads to in inevitably is that before you know it, there is like a plethora of APIs, and there is almost a shadow economy of APIs. There's an API sprawl which is there. You have built APIs which are in production, and somebody forgot about them because 4 years ago it was built, and now that creates a security vulnerability. The other is that the rate of change is so fast these days that we were speaking about earlier MVP, and we need to get out to the market, capture it, the opportunities right now. So implementations have to be fast. Uh, that sometimes leads to a lot of issues with you've not configured from a security aspect the rate limiting, the configurations on the API gateways correctly, and that can be exploited very easily. Thirdly, what also happens is that there is a lot of uh, these days there's a lot of misconfigurations and all of these basic issues which are missing. And with the advent of AI especially, there's a lot of AI in the hands of the hacker as well. It's not that we are just having AI for building things and for good causes. Actually, there is an asymmetric advantages the hackers have now for uh, penetrating our systems. So these are some of the basic things where the basic flaws are. Now, how can we protect ourselves? How can we do that? So I would say that the OWASP top 10 framework, vulnerabilities. That's a very, very basic level where your broken object level authentication, your broken authentication, your resource misuse. All of these are very easy and documented things that we can solve for. That's a good framework. The NIST list is out there, so that's a good framework to kind of have. Uh, I think it's also time to invest in SEIM tools. Basically, most of the monitoring today about API is health, like whether your API is working or not. But a lot of people are not investing in monitoring what is going on with the API. What are the patterns of use of the API? Is there some malicious use that is happening? Is somebody trying to use the API at an excessive rate? So logging and monitoring extended information and SIM tools are also one framework element which are. And I think having external help on VAPT periodically, making sure that we are doing external scans from whether automated. There are AI tools also now that allow you to do that, and supplement, VAPT, which is done by humans. I think those are the four things I would say that as a framework would help.
Yeah, you rightly said about investing in SIM tools, SOC, and VAPT. Maybe having some tools around API management to ensure that somebody is left open APIs in production to be closed. But let me come back to that. Sushan, while we talking about all this investment into SOC, VAPT and API, breaches still happen, right? So what do you think are the key components you would need for an effective incident response plan, resilience, and business continuity in case of these attacks?
Okay.
Am I So basically, in these kind of incidents getting occurred, so there needs to be some level of steps which actually needs to be followed. So one is preparation. Preparation becomes a very important aspect when once these incidents gets occurred. Uh, and during these preparations, you can talk about internal or external accidents. You can think about on-call information. Something like the team who is working upon it cannot respond to the external or internal customers, but there is a lot of chaos, and those chaos can actually be managed uh, using these on-call informations, and that needs to be logged upon, because ultimately there are a lot of customer-facing applications or APIs or exposures being there, and they can give you a lot of information actually what is happening on ground as well. So those on-call informations are even required. And then what you even need to think about your backup strategies. So because a lot of restorations will happen using those backup processes, storages. So those needs to be taken care of during the prep phase. The second most important piece is the detection and analysis phase. During the detection and analysis phase, you should see what are the auto alerts which are alarming, which are there. So we always need to keep our auto alerts ecosystem, be it Nagios, be it other SMS or email-based alerts, any or automated alerts which the organization has already been placed within the entire platform. Those obviously needs to be monitored very carefully. Then the alert system using the third party applications which the entire team has actually evolved or has implemented, those needs to be taken care of. Then there should even be a manual discovery of the user reported incidents, as I mentioned during the prep phase about the on-call information. So if there is a manual discovery of the real-time incidents which is happening, that will give you a real-time picture about it. Then there are functional impacts which needs to be taken care of. Then the third most important aspect around this is about containment, eradication, and recovery. This is a third is predominantly important so that the potential damage or the theft of the resources can actually be prevented of. And the last and final phase, which I personally presume is the post-incident observation. So once the incident has done, once the damage control has been taken, now you need to retrospect that how can you further take a lot of recovery actions, what are alarms you need to take upon, what are the third-party integrations you need to act upon, what are the backup strategies or what are the SIM tools which you need to act upon. So slowly and gradually, because the incident does not come that, okay, I'm coming, it comes so and most of the incidents are actually unplanned. Nothing is in a planned manner. Whatever is in a planned manner, that can well be taken care of by your automated systems, but all the unplanned ecosystems is where most of us fails, and we are not at all prepared about it. So we always need to have a cyclical process, and I personally believe it's a cyclical process.
Thanks. So, leading from what you said in terms of being responsible, trying to have action plans, and how to you took those 4 steps how to respond to an incident. So, Manoj, I have a question for you. We've heard from both the speakers on various tools like SIM, VAPT, and And when we talk about data, we talk a lot about encryption. Now, when we talk about API security, what is in addition to encryption that can help enhance the API security?
Sure. So first of all, thank you so much for having me here. And just a disclaimer, views expressed here are my personal. Before answering to the question, I would like to pinpoint everyone's attention towards one unique thing which API brings in. See, we all know if data is stored, data is at rest, we encrypt it, we restrict the access, and we say, okay, I know my data is here, I have enough logs, guardrails, I am secure. When you talk about websites, we say, yeah, it's a static content, blah, 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 I have done my VAPT, I am secure. Now, the unique threat that the API brings in is API is supposed to transport data from one place to another, right? And in most of the cases, APIs are interfacing with our third-party interfaces, third-party applications, where we have a slightly less control. I mean, I cannot have my API saying, okay, I'll not let my API expose to internet, right? So we are supposed to expose our APIs to the external world, and APIs holds a lot of critical data, and that's where API security comes into picture. Now, second unique proposition is using SIEM, I can monitor who is logging into my system, what is my network behavior, blah, blah, blah. But when I have knowingly exposed my API to go and interact with external world, how to first identify that which is actual traffic and which looks to be a malicious traffic, right? So there are lots of complications around API security, and just observability in isolation might not be the best help here. So a couple of things in addition to encryption, because we all know SSL TLS 1.3, it's done dusted. What's next? What if someone has already gained access to my API, right? Even if the data flow is encrypted, I can still, I mean, as an attacker, I can still access the data. And that's where the real challenge comes into picture. So a couple of things that probably we should do is, in addition to encryption, the basic old school thought, authentication and authorization. Even if I'm able to authenticate, and if my API is supposed to only fetch, say, my first name and my last name, is there a guardrail to authorize that what data are you taking back, boss? Are you authorized to take that data or not, right? That's the second thing. Third thing we should do is, there is a very, I would say, good industry practices happening these days is about API gateways. That is an additional check which says, okay, you are authenticated well enough, you are authorized well enough, but I still don't trust you. I need to ensure that what you're supposed to do, you're doing that itself, right? So API gateways comes into picture. The fourth thing is, in addition to the observability, we also need to have a lens of security around that. Okay, I know that at 9 a.m. my traffic hits. I'm expecting a surge in traffic. But is that traffic coming from known sources, good sources, whitelisted IP addresses, or not? Even if the network says packet denied, am I being scanned? Am I being targeted? So observability in terms of the context of API, that what is the use case for this API? Am I expecting a traffic from a particular country or not? So those kind of continuous monitoring comes into picture. And last but not least is logging and a versioning of my APIs. What if there is a intentional or unintentional changes in my API, which has changed the behavior? While all my guardrails looks good, authorization is there, authentication is there, but my API has silently started to take more data which it was supposed to do, right? So input validation, output encoding, these are the things probably in conjunction can be a good approach to secure APIs.
Okay, so you spoke about observability, you spoke about continuous monitoring. Now, and you briefly touched about, on the real-time analytics part of it. How do you think real-time analytics can add more value or enhance the API security?
Sure. So real time, as we all know, as I said, APIs are supposed to connect to external source. APIs are supposed to take or send data, right? But the real time thing brings additional layer of security to ensure what it is doing right now is actually a legitimate behavior or not. Because APIs, I mean, post facto days are gone when we can rely on a reactive approach or a forensic to identify what went wrong. We are in the era of digital natives where things happens like a lightning speed. We need to have a quick detection so that we can take a quick response. I mean, any organization would not love to be in a position where, okay, let me see 5 hours back what data my API has taken back, right? So we all need to have a very real-time or maybe a predictive analytics into picture, which should tell, hey boss, while this is authenticated, authorized, input validated, but still I feel something is not right. Probably the IP addresses which it is connecting is not from a very friendly country, right? So the real-time analytics gives a more, I would say, power for us to identify how is the behavior and maybe take a proactive call, if not proactive, at least a real-time call to save us from a situation where, we are doing a reactive thing, doing analysis and forensics and so on and so forth. Yeah.
So, Vijendra, what are your thoughts on continuous monitoring and real-time analytics with regards to API security?
Sure. So I generally come from data field. So I've been into this field from last 15 years and doing lot of data science. So continuous monitoring comes with lot of data. Now the kind of input log what we get to like Grafana and OpenSearch, right? How we are going to analyze it, it's also tricky, right? Only API ping or API hit or different pattern in API hit, if we are going to analyze, we may not be able to capture the right thing. Okay. For that, we need to understand whatever the data coming to us through API, is it validated? If it is validated, then we have to see the pattern in the data. Generally, what hackers will do, let's say they are trying with some phone number, they are just changing some variation in the phone number, maybe one last digit. The pattern will remain same. Maybe name is same, surname is going to little change. So all those patterns should be anomaly detected way. We have to identify and we have to figure it out. So this pattern could be anything. So now in terms of predictive analytics or how AI can be used, there are multiple algorithms which is getting developed. But in a way which I can see, the anomaly detection should be strong once this API is exposed. Now, what is happening? The people are moving towards the one single architecture. They are going to microservice architecture. Lot of APIs exposed, right? And all those APIs, getting data or sending data outside, inside, outside the market, right? How this can be used so strongly so that we can figure out what kind of anomalies are there, and if anomalies rightly detected, what could be the response mode for that. Apart from that, there is lot of thing which we can implement or find it out in terms of analytics. For example, if we are having real time monitoring, one ping is coming from one place, right? Let's say we get average ping from place like Nagaland, let's say 10 pings in a second, right? Suddenly it increased to 100 ping per second. So that should also come into real time monitoring. It's our alert system should say that this is not the average traffic. Maybe the everything is validated. What Manoj said, right? Authorization happened, authentication happened, data is also validated, but something is not normal. So that alert system should come to us. So all those, everything coming into this analytics field.
Okay. So you spoke about data science, and given that you have so much of experience around data science, you spoke about AI tools. Do you think there is an effective implementation possible of AI tools? That can be integrated with the API security strategy. Are there tools effectively possible to do that?
Yes, but it is how we define AI. Because if we define AI on broader way, then it will become difficult. We have to define AI use cases in very niche way, right? Let's say data coming to me. I just want to predict like when anomaly happens, right? Then it's a very broader thing because anomaly could not be a single type anomaly, right? It could be anything anomalies. If we feel that anomaly can happen at the 12 a.m. in night or maybe 2 a.m. in night, then it will be not purely defined right AI thing. So what I believe, the way you are going to define your use case, that is going to actually define everything. So data coming to that, so let's say we have last 2, 3 or 4 years of data, and we try to identify different kind of anomalies. Now the AI tools are that much capable that using that data, it can generate the pattern what our other vulnerability can come to us, and using that vulnerability, the prediction system will work, and it can highlight the sensitive time or sensitive uh, patches in our system, which can throw us the error or any kind of anomaly issue. So that is one thing. Apart from that, automation is also important in terms of, let's say I am started getting hit, right? Now AI have identified that this particular thing has come to me. I will reduce the API rate limit. I will reduce the threat so that I can control and manage. If AI can identify in my microservice architecture, one part is affected, then it will automatically cut off. Maybe it can, automatically run second Docker up the second API with different security policy. That prediction system should be inbuilt in AI. But again, this is all will come with the practice and lot of years of experiences. Like suddenly it cannot start.
Right. So just you spoke about the Microsoft services architecture. How do you think the microservices architecture is how do I say that it influences your entire API security strategy?
So I'll just give a little background about my organization. So I come from LenDenClub. It's a P2P organization. Everything is digital. Uh, One who knows about P2P lending is the platform where person can come and take a loan, small ticket size loan, and person can also invest over the loans. So I as a customer can come and invest over 500 people, and and those people when they give the return in terms of loan repayment, I'll get my investment return. So that's a simple strategy. I cannot be there in every city. So for that, everything is managed digitally. 100% operations are digital. Now, when we started, everything was into a single EC2 box, and because startups start in that way, right? We cannot have fully fledged technology running at the very beginning of the year. With the time, what we have done, we understood that this is not scalable, and we cannot control everything. For every single change, we have to go through changing whole system, and even lines of code have to be changed and checked because thousands lines of codes are there. So we felt the need of having a microservice architecture. Very good idea. Then we started with disintegrating everything. We have started having a microservice architecture. Then it comes a problem where we have lot of APIs now, and once APIs increase, then the security threat will also increase, right? Then we have to follow all sort of strategies. What we have to think, right? We have to encrypt all APIs. All data should be encrypted. Each data encryption should be changed with after some particular point of time. And after that, we also have to see what kind of RBACs are there. And apart from that, we also have to see, since lot of APIs are there, how I'm managing the gateway, right? Apart from gateways, we also have to see like uh, we have to set all kind of ping strategy where API hits are coming. We have to monitor it separately. So problems are there, but again with the modern tools, we can manage all those things. But again, if we are going to microservice architecture, we also have to plan the security standard and different control measures before going to that.
Yeah. So it was just coming to you.
Yeah, so just to add to that, one unique advantage that microsegmentation brings in, especially for startups, is it helps us to create different pockets depending on the maturity. I mean, any startup, I'm pretty sure everyone can agree to this, does not have equal revenue coming from different line of services, right? We call it as build and grow. Some of the things are already built, which is in growth phase where we have some revenue coming in, and that holds as the pocket for us to keep on inventing and innovating new use cases, right? And when we are in the build phase, which is the newer ideas, newer innovative thought processes, use cases, which we are in the phase of doing a pilot or testing that how it is helping people to adopt to our platform, right? And we cannot have, first of all, similar level of investments for security on build and grow both the pockets, right? I mean, for security, to be very honest, investment is always not very valued. People always, I mean, until unless someone barged into my house, I never go and say is that, okay, my lock was very good. Someone saved me, right? We only say, oh, this lock was not good because someone barged into my place, right? So not many organization understands that importance of investing into security, and which is a very common norm across. I mean, at least in India for sure, right? So micro segmentation helps us to do profiling and ensure that what needs a bit of, I would say, easier lenses, or not just from a security control effectiveness perspective, but also plan us to do a effective strategy for cyber security. What is important for the organization? Probably we may have an enterprise grade solution, or we may have more investments to securing those pods, and the innovation hubs can probably run on open source solution, right? So even from a CISO's lens, having a right strategy for my organization, micro segmentation helps me to identify which pod needs what level of security and hence what level of investment.
So rightly said, organizations. So organizations are investing in microservices. Obviously, the need of the hour, everybody wants to do that. But then the organizations are also looking at cloud, right? Because you want less cost. And I think this new thing which you were discussing earlier, e-commerce, quick commerce, everybody wants to use cloud. How do you ensure security in the cloud when we talk about micro-segmentation, when we talk about microservices?
I think it's much easier, to be very honest. I mean, over a decade of experience, I have seen my previous journeys with on-prem setups to now working in a digital native where we are 100% in cloud. I think cloud has definitely made life easier. It has a couple of reasons. First of all, of course, the OPEX cost and all we can debate later. But coming from implementation of not just tech landscape, but also the security thing, it is very easy, one click away. Like, for example, he was explaining EC2s, right? I mean, we can have certain VPCs with a certain set of security controls. We can have certain spot instances, which is on demand. Whenever there is a need, whenever there is a load, my platform will auto scale, will sustain my use case. Once the load is normalized, my infra cost also goes down. So of course, cloud has helped not just from a security perspective, but from a CTO lens, doing an investment in infrastructure, having a scalable solution, all that stuff is the added advantage. Coming to security, all these cloud natives has made security implementation very easier. If I go back 5, 7, 10 years back, doing a SIEM integration with various log sources was its own challenge. Different log sources, some support syslog, some support say WinSCP log, etc., etc. Doing an integration with log sources itself used to be a 3 months project, right? Coming from SIMSOC background. Now everything is an API integration. You just exchange the key and you are there. Most of these log sources are now generic log sources. Connectors are already available. So cloud has made things very seamless, scalable, and of course the native security capabilities has made it secure as well.
Thanks, Manoj. So coming back, Sushan, to the discussion which Vijendra was having, what in your thought, that AI tools can effectively bring in when we talk about API security strategies?
So predominantly, the there could be sorry. So there could be multiple tools which could harness these kind of API securities. But predominantly, we have to scale and we need to actually do a lot of planning before doing any kind of these kind of tools implementation. So first of all, we need to actually check that which all what are our requirements per se while doing the security layers. Number one, what are the exposures we are having internally? Sorry. So, what are the exposures we are having internally uh, 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 from an API perspective or from an application perspective? Uh, Basis on those kind of ecosystems, we have to internally define that there are certain third-party tools which can bring in a lot of importance for it, and once those third-party tools are available, definitely we can implement those third-party tools. Definitely, there has to be a cost benefit analysis on those third party integrations which we are trying to adopt. The second part is the internal tools or internal layers which we need to incorporate around those ecosystems. That needs to be taken care of. While implementing this, uh, so first phase is the planning phase, the second phase is the implementation phase, the third phase is the analytical phase. We actually need to retrospect and we need to analyze the data which are coming in, which are bringing in, what level of analysis we have done, what level of data protection we have done, what are the security layers, what are the breaches which is happening. Uh, as Manoj rightly said a minute ago, that we need to see the layers. So there could be external objects or external threats which are coming in, which we are unable to verify. So those are analytical research and API logs actually helps us in analyzing a lot of those data. So those are predominantly important thing, and we need to redevelop it again and again. We need to see the third-party integrations, what level of benefit we are getting on a time-to-time basis. Since nowadays we are adopting AI and cloud ecosystems to our utmost extent, we even need to evaluate what level of exposures they are getting. So let me give an example. Some point in time, I was actually exploring the ports which are being exported even within the cloud ecosystem from my ecosystem. And I identified there are 3-4 potential ports which were actually opened, which we didn't require of. So these kind of ad hoc surveys, ad hoc manual uh, checks and balances actually needs to be taken care of, and this will actually bring a lot of advantage to our entire security ecosystem.
So, Vineet, I have a question for you now. We heard about ports being open, complexity, cloud, microservices, everything. So now this complexity is leading. Complexity is one problem which arises the need for security, right? Security breaches only happen when it's too complex to manage and fix. Now, how do you ensure that your security strategy is standardized across the API deployment? There are no human errors. How do you ensure that this human error in deployment of API should not happen?
It's a good question, and I think it is said that the source of breaches mostly it's not the systems, it's humans which cause the breaches. Uh, so I think from my perspective of having built APIs, in the financial sector where security is of utmost importance, uh, you know, what I've seen is that standardization necessarily needs automation, right? And automation, there are multiple tools now. You need to, at the basic foundation level, have a CI/CD pipeline. You could be doing Jenkins, you could be doing your GitLab or a GitHub driven strategy actions, whatever. But it's very, very important to lay the foundation and have the discipline of a CI/CD pipeline so that humans are not deploying the code where errors can happen and in configurations, etc. It's happening through a script, right? Now, adding to the next layer on top of that, infrastructure is where these APIs are running on, these apps are running on. So it could be on the cloud. Now we have to spin up the infrastructure. You could be on a Kubernetes, on a container model. Every API needs to have resources and everything, right? So even provisioning the infrastructure should be a code. Now,
Infrastructure as a code.
infrastructure as a code. So uh, I would say that once you have the automation of CI/CD, you should expand it into having the whether it's Ansible or even the clouds today have a lot of tools, Terraform and others, cloud formation. Every cloud comes with their own tool now for building the infrastructure. So we should also standardize that. Now, the other thing layered on top of this is the what we call DevSecOps. Now, not just bring the DevOps, but bring security into the DevOps. So when we are shipping something, we are testing or enforcing policies at the static level, testing it and everything. So security as a code, I would say, is the third layer that you add on top of this. And that would mean that your build cycle is testing APIs through scripts and other mechanisms for at least the known vulnerabilities. Are you allowing or do you have the vulnerability of unlimited resource consumption, for example? Like if somebody gets in, do you allow the API to just scale? Like somebody can maliciously not only get access to the other data, but there are denial of service attacks. Your competitor, somebody malicious, could be trying to bring your infrastructure down, right? Increase your cloud cost. So those kind of things can also be done. From my experience, what I can share is that whenever I've seen under my watch things go wrong, and things have gone wrong, to be very honest, things happen. Uh, the majority of the times is like the human mistakes happen in configuration. The inconsistency of a production or a pre-prod or a unit testing. We tested it under this circumstance. We, mistakenly promoted it to production with the same thing, and that was not enough to work in production because your UAT and your dev environments are very guarded, and they have no, potential loss or a risk of breach or data loss if something happens. So I would say that if we have to focus on building this strategy of layering automation, infra as a code and bringing security as a code with DevSecOps operations, and then making sure that your consistent configurations are also automated. That's what I can share that can bring the element of human errors out of it.
Yeah, thanks, Viren. I mean, you rightly said. I read somewhere that Gartner has, said that 99% of the breaches would happen because of misconfiguration in the cloud. And we all know security in the cloud and security of the cloud is two different things. Manoj, your thoughts on this?
Sure. So, he mentioned about planning, CI/CD, DevOps, DevSecOps, and all. One interesting fact about APIs is, or for that matter, any element of infrastructure or code security is we can only talk about or we can only secure what we know. And the uniqueness an API can bring is, for example, if I'm a developer, I want to test a functionality of API integration. I'll definitely not touch upon the API which is in production, right? What I'll do is I'll create a test API. I'll do the testing, and I, being a human being, I'm allowed to forget things. I forgot to bring down that API, right? I did my testing. I completed my day, closed my laptop, went back home. Now, what will happen after that? Someone on the internet will run a crawling, will do a discovery, will identify an API which is not protected enough because this is not in production. My InfoSec guy will only look after all my APIs which is in production. All the CSPMs of the world are monitoring our production APIs. What about this one API which is connected to my production database, open on internet, right? So we also have to think from a strategy perspective, which is called continuous discovery of our internet footprinting. There are solutions in market which is categorized as this dark web crawling and all, ASM, attack surface monitoring tool, sorry, I recollected, which basically gives us a real-time footprint of our infrastructure and our code on the internet. So that element should also be added in the strategy, and probably, if not a real-time, but should a periodic check on our footprinting is also a must, because unless we know, we can't protect it, right?
So that leads to a very interesting question. When we talk about API security, whether it should be a managed service or in-house.
So that's a debate that I always have with my CTO. I personally believe we should have a hybrid approach here. When I say hybrid, while 60% of my mind says it has to be in-house, but I still want to have an independent view, right? Because not everyone is an expert and no one is an expert in security. Every individual brings a new unique element when we talk about even doing a VAPT exercise, red teaming and all, right? So everyone brings a unique proposition. So I personally think the initial discovery can be an outsourced one, can be a tool driven, can be agency driven, but in-house is the core, because in-house we know the context, and for securing anything, context plays the key. For example, if I am seeing an API which is pumping continuous data to my external, say, third-party integration, from an outsider lens, that might look like a data exfiltration. But if I know the business, if I know the context, I can tell, yes, this is my seller or this is my buyer. I know this is supposed to have this behavior. Wherein, at the same time, if API B is showing that behavior, can be malicious one. So the context and bringing that context for a managed services partners, at least I have not seen it to be very, very effective. So we all can have a detective layer as a managed services, but the moment it comes to a validation, a response, or adding a context layer to that, that actually plays to make it effective versus the cost that we are paying for that. So I think the hybrid strategy is what I always vouch for, and that's my sense.
So we have, all the panelists here. Anybody have what are your views? I mean, he obviously said that he looks for an hybrid model. We all know red teaming, blue teaming, and all these concepts. So, being a CTO, Vineet, what do you think about it?
No, I agree with Manoj. I think hybrid, and especially with there is, AI we can all use, but we also have to recognize hackers are using AI way before us, and they are using it more creatively.
Yeah.
And one thing, the other thing we also have to realize is the motivation factor, right? We are, as a team that is managing the infrastructure, we are protecting everything. Our motivation is to protect. The motivation of a hacker is that he has to get in, and he has to only get in once. And these are highly motivated guys. They'll be 24 hours on caffeine and trying to figure out as a badge of honor that, I got into somebody's system. Versus our team is, 9 to 5, 5 to 5, whatever, they are doing. So the motivation levels definitely are much higher with the hacker. So I say that, from a hybrid perspective, you need to have peripheral, coalition of allies where XDR solutions, your other solutions have to be managed. That, there is a lot of the, Viren talked about the anomaly detection. It's a science. You cannot just, detect anomaly based on your data, right? Somebody who's looking at, 10% of internet traffic or 20% of internet traffic would have a better sense of what anomalies and patterns are emerging, and they are specialized in that area. So the periphery has to be secured by such solutions, and I would suggest they be managed services so that, the experts are there to help you. And I agree. I think the internal security, the last layer, has to be in-house, because that is dependent on the builder's perspective. We have built it, we have created it, we understand the context, we understand the data, we understand what the use case is. So the teams have to take the responsibility of doing the last layer of security, encryption, etc.
Thanks. So my next question to you is like, we've talked about technology, and you're talking about, we can do certain things can only be done with technology. I mean, misconfigurations we spoke about. I mean, how do you build the right skill set? Because it's not just technology alone; it's the skill set also that requires, the in-house part of it. While managed services is the security organizations with professionals doing it day in and out. How do you build that in-house skill set?
Yeah, I think building skill sets, if the most easiest thing is hire the right skilled people, but that's not always the case. You hire the right skilled people, the world has moved on, the techniques have evolved and whatnot. So I think there has to be a continuous upgradation of skills. I think best practices are driven. Um, it might be controversial, might work for some people, not work for some people. I do, push my teams to certify themselves in best practices. At least the people who are responsible and accountable for security, uh, go for a CIISSP certification or a CEH, ethical hacker course. Because what that does, it at least equips you with the basics of what the mindset of the adversary is. You at least have that mindset, the basic, what they will be trying. The second thing is, which is not very well encouraged, but I do encourage my teams, is be connected to the broader security community, like meetups, and there are several groups online or offline. Participating in that gives you the ability to hear other experiences, what is going on, what was somebody hit by. So that's a great way of sharing your learnings, and also it's a give and get. You share what you have learned, and you get in return what others have learned. And thirdly, I would say that it's always a investment in training, and it needs, like Manoj and Viren talked about that. There has to be an investment, right? And sometimes you don't. Security becomes your last cost line item in investing it, because we've got API security, we are encrypting, so why should we invest in training people now or having these training? So I think continuous training, but also scenario-based trainings, like internal scans or internal anomalies were detected, then getting the team together with with the development team. We do workshops like once a month or once a quarter. That
You know, uh, Filling that gap.
So again, what Manoj told, right? Developer will try to do and develop everything. They will try to bring new models, new APIs. Everything will come, right? With the time, since one example also given that we have created just test API, we made sure that everything is good in production, but test API left open, right? So all those things, then I have to have a DevSecOps kind of person or MLOps kind of person who can secure those APIs, because just creating a good model, creating good API will not work. So eventually, imparting right knowledge to ML engineer is important, but they will never be a DevSecOps kind of. Again, coming back to managed services, getting right DevSecOps guy is also very difficult, and getting this team built, it takes sometimes 6 to 8 months, maybe years, right? So that way, I also feel that managed services would be good option to start with the right way and slowly and gradually develop your own team. Eventually, the developer will never be as prompt as the security guys or the people who are well known enough for securing the APIs and all those things. So I believe people will know, people will follow some basics, people will also get training, but their prime motive will always be development. So that's what I believe. We have to have right team, and we may have to invest more to get the right team. But initially, we can start with the managed services.
Thanks. So now Tika says that we are almost on time. Security is at the point of discussion which can go all for hours and hours, and we can have different views, keep debating on that. I thank you, all of you, to be here today, and share your insights. And I hope the audience also gained good insight about the API security today with this discussion.